G'day guys, new player positions for AFL 2026 have just dropped, and today I'm going to go through every player that has been awarded with DPP status to start the 2026 season. There are some big winners and some big losers, so let's get into it and chat everything DPP. Now, before we get into the individual players and teams, let's talk about some quick DPP facts. If you are new to the game, what on earth is a DPP? It is a dual position player. In other words, it is a player that you can select on more than one line. That might be a defensive midfielder, a mid forward, a ruck forward. We'll go through that a little bit later, and you will get an understanding, I think, as we go through the video. But remember, to achieve DPP status, a player must play 35% in a secondary position. So they may be a majority midfielder, but they may spend a fair bit of time forward, 35% plus. If that's the case, they will achieve DPP status, in that case being a mid forward. Players can be awarded DPP status during the year. So new DPP status will be awarded to eligible players after the conclusions of rounds 5, 11 and 17. We saw many players such as Christian Petrarca get DPP status nice and early on and save some people like my man Janath. DPP status cannot be taken away during the season. So, for example, if a player's got defensive mid status and plays purely as defender, they won't lose that midfield status either. It is with them for the remainder of the season. And remember, if a player already has DPP, this cannot change. So if you're already a mid forward, that can't change to a defensive mid, for example, and players can only be selected in two positions. So if we look at the example of Caleb Daniel from last year, he was already a mid forward, but spent the majority of his time as a defender, but he can't obtain a mid/forward/defensive status. His midfield forward status remains because he already had DPP at the beginning of the season. But there's some quick facts. Let's look at some of the losers. Now, you can see Baz Lenker here. He is not a happy man, and we've got a man from Seinfeld here. No DPP for you. So we've got a quick list of players here. These are not the only players that have lost DPP, but just some of the bigger names out there that were pretty relevant in the 2025 season. So right up the top, you do have Baz. He's now only a midfielder only. Will he still be relevant there? Possibly, same as his mate, Maxi Holmes. He's holding him back from getting too angry there. Maxi is a midfielder only as well. Dogger Jackson, a ruck only, so lost that really handy forward ruck status. We've got Jack Sinclair, now a defender only. Played the majority of his time there. Not enough to maintain that status, which is unfortunate. Jack McRae is now mid only. And again, unfortunately, I don't think that Jack is going to be relevant in really any way this year, unless he surprised us, and he could do that. He's Supercoach royalty. We've got Chad Warner as a mid only. Super disappointing as an overall selection last year, so I don't think he'll be too relevant. The Horny Man is a midfielder only. And last bloke I've got on the list is Bam Bam Kennedy, a really reliable forward option for us last year. Unfortunately, just a midfielder going into 2026. But that's the bad news. Let's take a look at the individual teams and look at the players who do have DPP going into the year. We'll start off with the Crom, and they have 5 players with DPP status going into 2026. And I think 2 relevant players here. We've got Charlie Edwards as that defensive mid, Cook as a mid forward, Billy Dowling as a mid forward. But the 2 really relevant ones here, I think, are going to be Isaac Rankin as well as Sid Draper. So Rankin, just a touch under 100 for an average last year, 99.7, but without doubt, he's going to be one of our best and most expensive forward options. We've got Draper, 23.3 for an average last year, and that's no surprise given the fact that most of his games were sub-affected, but who knows, could provide a lot of value going into this season if he actually gets some full games. On to my boys, the Lions, and you got my man ZZ as a defensive ruck, Sammy Draper as a ruck forward. We'll track and see how he's going, but who knows? They're rare as hen's teeth, these ruck forwards. Could he be relevant as the season goes along? This man, Rat Bailey, 87.7 for an average last year, but an All-Australian year. If he plays some more time in the midfield, I think that average could actually improve. We got Ty Hayes as a young mid forward, but I don't think he's going to be too relevant for us at the moment. Onto the Blue Baggers, we've got Charleston as a defensive mid, Cottrell as a mid forward, Taylor Byrne as a mid forward, and Liam Reedy came across from Freo, a ruck forward. Could he potentially be relevant? We need to grab that number one spot and show a fair bit, but who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Onto the Pies, and we've got Lipinski as a mid forward. He averaged mid-70s last year. Don't think he's going to be too relevant for us. This man, Jordan De Goey. Now, could he be super relevant? Ended the year amazingly under 300K with a 59.3 average, but can he recapture his best form? Can he get his body right? If so, he could prove to be an absolute bargain, the true definition of a fallen premium. Oscar Steen as that ruck forward. Again, always a handy option there. Zane McCarthy as another ruck forward as well. Onto the Bombers, and we've got Angus Clark as that defensive mid. I think Farrow as a defensive mid, new rookie this year, may be a pretty popular selection down there. The unfortunate news is that Nick Martin has now been ruled out for the season. Would have been a really handy forward line option for us. Unfortunately, we need to send him our best wishes and hope to see him again in 2027. Harry Jones is a mid forward. And this man, Sullivan Roby, another rookie that was selected in round one this year. He's a mid forward for us, and I think he'll be a popular selection given the fact that many pundits think he'll get some fair game time at the start of this year. Onto Freo, they've got Bolton, Kickett, and Cox. Nothing of real interest here. I had Bolton last year, and I knew it when I selected him, but an absolute roller coaster, closer to a train wreck, particularly towards the end of the year. Onto the Cats, and I'm not even going to go through this. We've got Ocean Mullen there as a defensive mid, and my man Forbesy with defensive forward status. Not a heap of relevance for the Giants. You got Leake as a defensive forward, Bedford as a mid forward, Hannaford as a mid forward, Hamilton mid forward, and Riccardi as a ruck forward. Potentially Jake Riccardi if he has some sort of a breakout year, but highly doubt it. Don't think we're going to go near many of these players. Onto the Suns, you've got Bell as a defensive forward, Zeke Hewland a defensive mid is a massive win. By all accounts, would have been playing in the senior side last year if they could have selected him. An absolute gun. Second pick overall in the draft. I think most teams will look to roll with him. Track, another big win as a mid forward. How's he going to go into that midfield rotation at the Suns? They've already got some absolute jets there. Your Anderson, your Rouse, your Millers, and this bloke underneath him, Bailey Humphrey, who's also a mid forward. What's the CBA percentage going to be like for these two men? Not too sure, but particularly Track, I think will be a really popular option next year. And you've also got Nick Holman as mid forward, but I don't think too many will look at him. Onto the Hawks, you've got Butler as a mid forward, Naan as that mid forward, as well as Schubert as a ruck forward. So depending on how cheap he is, he may be one of those blokes that we could select as R3. Naan, some big ups on him as well. So as a Supercoach selection, we'll just have to wait and see. Onto the Ds, and we've got Mentha as that defensive forward. Cozzy Pickett is the big name here as a mid forward. Now, lots of the options, as we've already mentioned, like your McRae's, your Kennedys have dropped off. So his relevance becomes even higher, I think, this year. Averaged 91.5 in 2025. So hopefully he can go at least 95 plus for us. Ed Langdon is a mid forward. Heath is at ruck forward. And Kalani White, son of Jeff, is also a ruck forward. Onto the Roos, and we've got a lot of names here. Who could be relevant? There are so many of these young blokes that could be, but for now, let's just chuck them on our watch list. We've got Dersma as a defensive forward. There was talks about him potentially moving to another club, so hopefully he gets some time and proves his ability. Whitlock as that defensive forward. Finn O'Sullivan had a so-so year for Supercoach last year, but he is a defensive mid. This is the big one. He will be the most expensive and the highest averaging forward we can select in 2026. It's a handy change from that defensive status, and to get a new option who averaged over 105 for us in our forward lines, I think is a really big win. You've got Simpkin, who's a little bit up and down as that mid forward. Robert Hanson Jr., mid forward. Stevens is that mid forward, as well as Hugo Makunda, I'm going to say. Probably butchered that. Also a mid forward. Onto the power, and the big one here is the man up the top, Connor Ozee averaged right dead bang on 105 Supercoach points last year. You've got Jace Burgoyne as a defensive mid, Ware as that defensive mid, Soldo as the ruck forward. But as we mentioned before, the big omission to this list is Jason Horne-Francis, the horny man. Who knows? May obtain it round 5, 11, 17 if he plays enough time forward. Onto the tags. Noah Bolter as that defensive forward, been a bit of a bad boy, but should look to play some more football this year. Sammy G as a defensive mid, a nice early pick. We're expecting him to get games, so definitely keep him on your watch list. Ross as that mid forward, Sonzi as a mid forward, and Zane. I'm going to say Zane P here because I have no idea, but that man is also a mid forward. Onto the Saints, and again, a few names here, but unfortunately, I don't know how many of them are going to be overly relevant. But you've got Travaglia as that defensive mid, Barrett as a defensive forward, Fincher as a defensive mid, then a raft of mid forward options here with Hill, Wood, Wilson, Paddy Sard, and then Charlie Banfield. Onto the Swans. So the big omission is obviously Chad Warner here, but we do have Snell as a defensive forward, Harry Cole as that defensive mid. Justin McInerney is changed up to a mid forward. Corey Warner, not the man we want Chad, but Corey Warner is a mid forward. And you've got my man Peanut Laddams as the ruck forward. West Coast, we've got again a few names here, but unfortunately, I don't know how many of the big boys are going to be overly relevant. However, some of the rookie price players may be exactly what we need. We've got Dewar as that defensive mid. Hoff has the same status there. A lot of mid forwards. So we've got Kelly, Graham as those more veteran type players. Then you've got Gross, Finn McKay, who's come across from the Pies, Sam Allen, new draft pick, as well as Tyler Williams. BJ Williams is a ruck forward, and Cooper Duff-Tyler, very early draft pick, number 4, is a ruck forward, which should be pretty handy if you're looking to ensure that you've got that status in your team. And we'll finish off with the doggies, where we have 10 names in total. We've got a couple of defensive forwards there with Buku Kamas and new father-son Will Darcy. Can he be anything like his older brother Sam? If he's half as good, I think the Dogs will be absolutely wrapped. You got Bailey Williams as a defensive mid, as well as Baker, Carmichael. Adam Treloar is now a mid forward. Now, we know that he's a huge risk. Durability is not his strong point, but we don't have many fantastic options for us down forward. So I think that he may be a little bit more relevant than what he'd usually be if we had some other options up our sleeve. You got Jolly Frazier. He could be one of these options that could be potentially more relevant. He's a younger type player, had a bit of a breakout season last year. That defensive status is now switched up, and he finds himself as a mid forward. Young Rolly Sanders, mid forward. Garcia and Artie Jones round out the mid forwards for the Doggies. So that is every DPP player discussed. Let me know down there in the comment section, guys, who are you looking to lock into your side this year? I know it's early. We're talking about AFL Supercoach. It has not even opened yet, but hey, is it ever too early to start doing a little bit of research? We're going to have a heap of content coming at you during the preseason, in season as well. Our goal is to go bigger and better than what we did last year. We've got some new people joining our brotherhood. Super excited, super stoked for the new season. So be sure to check out all of our content. And BBL's coming up as well. Don't forget about the cricket. Scobes and JG have you covered in all areas there. So thanks again for watching, guys. All the best. We'll see you in the next one. Cheers. Bye.